Let's get it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the SchuZ Show. I'm your host, Zach SchuZ Shoemaker, and today I'm going to be kicking off this show with a very special guest. He's a man that is 33-5 in his career, 21 KOs, ranked number 7 by the WBA, number 11 by the WBO in the middleweight division. He goes by the nickname Pretty Boy, Michael Zerafa. Michael, appreciate you taking time to come on today, man.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Well, I got to ask you the very first thing there. I said your nickname's Pretty Boy. I want to know the story behind that. How'd you get that nickname?
It definitely wasn't for my looks. It started my amateur career. The guy that was announcing my fight, the MC, just said he was very pretty, very, very nice to watch and neat, and he goes, the pretty boy. And
Okay.
it just stuck. And I just couldn't shake it off, sadly. I tried, but I just rolled with it.
So you're coming off a pretty big win just a few weeks ago now. I guess it was about a month ago now, but you came off a KO, 7th round. And I know you've probably been able to watch through the film yet. You've rewatched the fight. You've taken some things away from it. Just now that you've processed the fight, what's your thoughts on the fight? Some pros, some cons? Like, what's kind of taking away from that fight as of now?
Yeah, look, for me, it was to get around because of COVID and everything that went through the last few years. I didn't really get much ring time. I was
Yep.
knocking everybody out, or unfortunately, I fell short against Lara in the world title, so I wasn't really getting much ring time. I think in 3 years, I only got about 5 rounds. So for me, the idea was to just stay composed and relaxed and get a tough guy in this year from Germany who was hadn't lost since 2016. He's only had 1 loss in his career and a former IBO world champion. I've been in there with some tough guys. So for me, it was just to get the rounds in. And, in the 7th round, we found that shot and we ended it pretty nicely and in style.
Would you say there's anything you grew from that fight and something that you took away? You said, okay, this is something I want to improve on, work on, add to my arsenal? Or was that just pretty much a fight you said just to get things underneath your round and kind of get some more fights and rounds underneath your belt?
No, definitely. I've been practicing and sparring too. Is just staying so controlled and just relaxed.
Okay.
Trying to be mature as a boxer. I'm 33 now, and I find myself. I've been in the ring with multiple world champions and beaten some of the best and lost against some of the best. But just trying to control that center and trying to just mature as a fighter. And I feel like I did that fight night. And people saying the glimpses of the old Zerafa is coming back.
Absolutely, man. Well, there's another part that you said about after that fight that you might have broken your hand earlier on in that fight. Was that confirmed then? Did you end up breaking your hand in that fight then?
So after the fight, I took the glove off. It was blew up like a balloon. It was huge.
All
It was
right.
black, but I don't know how, but I survived a no break, which was
Okay.
very, very surprising because I felt in the 2nd or 3rd round and I was like, crap. I said in the corner, I thought 100% we've broken it.
Mhm.
I got it tested. It was all sweet. He reckons I just hit straight on the bone and tweaked that ligament a little bit, which swelled up. But I came good within a couple of days. The swelling went down and the pain was all good and we're back to 100%.
Awesome. Well, we're going to get into your career. What's next for yourself? Kind of got a lot of questions in that regard, but I also want people to get to know your story a little bit better, get to know you and who you are a little bit. And so I've got to kick off. Obviously, you're from Australia, and that's one of the things I love about boxing is that this is an international sport, and so everyone kind of comes together at your level especially. But when you're growing up, going through the amateurs, going through different rankings when you're growing up, you stay home. And each country has a different, different styles the way they fight, different cultures and how they fight, and different things along those lines. And so I got to ask you, being out there, Australia, close to New Zealand, all those different areas, what's the boxing scene like out there like?
It's growing. I mean,
Yep.
it used to be pretty terrible. I'm not going to lie, because we're coming from a country where boxing is not really that respected.
Mhm.
But lately, because of myself, Leon Paro,
Yep.
Apatea, Tim Zhu, these guys that are at that level, we're showing that Australians have talent,
Yeah.
and it's day by day it's getting bigger and better, and it's exciting for us because we're getting the opportunity now and people are taking us seriously and giving us the opportunity.
And as you've seen it grow now, because like you said, it hasn't always been this big old place where you have all these great athletes and fighters, but now it's like, okay, you either got world title contenders, world champions have even been coming from there. Yourself's one of the top ranked guys. You have young guys like Temo, he's a really good looking prospect at the heavyweight division. You look at just the growth that you've been a part of. What's it like seeing that you are always going to be remembered as one of those guys that's been a part of this growth now?
Yeah, well, I'm probably the first one and the only one that's still going from generations back.
Mhm.
I'm old now. I was fighting
Sure.
on when Anthony Mundine was winning world titles. But it's good. It's good to see all these young up and comers and prospects that are moving forward. They're going out there and giving it a crack. And like myself, I've fought for multiple world titles, and I've been in there with some of the best. I think I've fought 11 world champions now, and I feel like the best of Marcus Rashford is yet to come. 33. I feel like 32 to 36 is the prime. People think it's
Hmm.
old, but I think the boxing is changing. Technically and stylistically, I think it's suitable more for 32, 36. That's the best years. I really believe that. Um, every day people are proving that.
So, what about you that makes you feel so confident in yourself, knowing that okay, yeah, I might be up in ages comparative to other people, or even historically, but you feel so confident that you still have such a bright future ahead of you. What instills that confidence in you?
Just my work ethic.
Okay.
Come fight time or whoever that I fight, I do the checklist, man. All the training, the dieting, all the sleeping, the recovery, the mind work, everything that goes on the outside. I mean, once you give 100% to everything, it's in God's hands. Like I'll go out there and give the best Marcus Zerafa, and if it's not enough, it wasn't meant to be.
Mm.
But I'll go out there and truly believe I've got the ability and the mindset to beat these guys, and I've proven that. So, and I still reckon the best Marcus Zerafa is coming. So we'll see. Like I said, just take one fight at a time. And I've got big things coming up, so I'm excited.
Has boxing always been your love? Did you play other sports growing up, or how did you kind of fall in love with boxing?
Yeah, look, as a young kid, I always started boxing. I never believed I could go this far. I always
Okay.
believed I wanted to. I didn't think I
Sure.
could do it. But I got to an age where I was like, you know what? I can actually make this a full time gig and become a world champion. So, I played AFL football down here we have in Australia, but my love and passion for boxing just took everything.
So when did it click and you started realizing, you know what, this is something that I can make a career out of, and maybe not even just a career, but I can be actually really good at this career. I can go make a lot of money. I can have a very successful career. When did that click for yourself?
Would have been like my first sparring session. I mean, we didn't even
Okay.
have a ring; it was just four chairs that outlined the square. Um, But as soon as I put those gloves on, I got in there, and I had no idea what I was doing, but I felt like I was Roy Jones Jr. Like I just felt invincible. But I mean, you have your day, but yeah, like I just knew this was a sport for me. I mean, I don't really like team sports. I like the discipline, dedication that's involved in boxing. Um, you know, you could win or lose a game, teammate, performing or not performing. Where in boxing, if you don't give 100%, it shows. So.
Mhm.
For me, that's what it's been about. Just trying to be the best I can.
So as you're going through your career and you're progressing, at what point did you think you could reach the level you've reached now? Like you said, you fought for world championships. You've been a guy that's fought 11 world champions in your career. You have an incredible record, as we were talking in the beginning, 33 and 5, 21 KOs. You're still going. When did you think you could be this successful?
Man, I feel like I could be more successful. I mean,
All right.
it doesn't, the pinnacle. I believe I can go higher. And every day I'm proving myself that age is just a number. Like I'm doing the training that I was doing at 21 at better quality. Faster times, stronger
Okay.
weights. So I believe that the best is yet to come, and I believe that I am destined for greatness, and the world title is coming. We're in line now with that. We're in talks, but I just feel like it's maybe 21. I said to myself that this is it. All in.
Well, I got to ask you then. You keep saying that the best is yet to come. You got a bright future ahead. So what do you got in store for us then? What's next for yourself? How high? What's the heights you can reach, you think, in your career now?
Well, I believe I can be a world champion. Everyone says, Freddie Roach. I've been all around the world. I've done training camps with the best in the world, and they
Mhm.
all said when the right Marcus Zerafa rocks up mentally, he beats everybody. Um, you know, I'm starting to learn now how to bring the best Marcus Zerafa every time. As a young kid, I was, one day I was on, the next day I wasn't. That was just
Mhm.
up and down, just how I was really, just the self doubt myself. But now I know how to rock up and switch on every time, and that's scary because, like I said, when the right Marcus Zerafa rocks up, he's dangerous.
Mm. And you've got a lot of options on the table, I can imagine. You just mentioned that world title shots could be on the line for yourself, but what could possibly be next for yourself? Like, what do you got in line for us?
Well, look, there's a massive fight there for me and Tim Zoo. That's the biggest fight in Australia, but he's doing his thing, I'm doing my thing. We're both top 10 in the world,
Hmm.
ranked across two of the same bodies now. I think I'm 7-1 and 10 in the other. But look, even Keith Thurman, I heard that Tim Zoo doesn't want that fight. They've reached out and said that I could be a potential opponent for him. But I want anybody that's in front of me. I'm sitting at 10. Give me 8, give me 9, give me whoever. Any fight
Okay.
that's going to elevate me close to a world title. I've never shied away from a fight. I fought all my world champions in their backyard. Um, I'm not scared to travel. I'm not scared to fight. So whoever's going to elevate me to that world title.
All right, you just said a couple things I got to ask you follow up questions on. One of which you said Tim Tszyu's not interested in the Keith Thurman fight. I know that's what everyone's been saying is likely could happen. That's what people are expecting at least. So with that being said, then is that possibly a fight then? Keith Thurman, someone you'd want, and at what weight class would that possibly be at then?
Well, look, I'm happy. He's happy to come up, or I'm happy to go down.
Okay.
I'm a junior middleweight. I can campaign there, but I've got high world rankings as a middleweight. But I walk around roughly around the same weight all the time. Always fit, always in the gym. So I'm easy. But me and Keith have said, he's happy to come up. So
Okay.
if he wants to mix it with the bigger boys, we're here.
So then you feel pretty confident that if you had to go down to 154 and fight there, you could easily do that, you believe?
Oh, look, I'm more comfortable at 160, but
Sure.
I easily make 154. Like no dramas at all.
And then I also got to follow up on the other part too. Is and obviously Tim Tszyu, that's been the fight people have been talking about. It's the biggest fight to make in Australia, as you alluded to. I know that was scheduled back in 2021. And COVID got involved and messed up that fight from occurring, but that could still be on the table. Both you guys, as you said, are both highly regarded fighters. Both guys have a lot of talent. Whether it happens this year, next year, whatever it is that the fight you really most want to make? Is that like if you could pick any fight in the world, is that the one you want?
Yeah, but not because of the name. Just more of you know, he thinks he beat me. I think I beat him. There's a lot of tension, a lot of hate. It's a. I'm trying to think of the word. Like, not an ego fight. It's just one of the. We don't need each other. Like he's going his path, I'm going my path. But there's been a lot of bad blood, and it's
Yeah.
a point that I want to prove more than anything. I believe I beat him. He's been ducking me, and the fight didn't happen because we had issues on our end and whatnot. But I don't know. I just feel like it's a fight. We don't need each other, but we want.
So when could that fight possibly happen? I know obviously you said you're looking at making your next level, your next jump, whatever it could be. He's working his level, but you guys both still have years left of fighting. It could be, like I said, this year, next year. Is there a timeline you'd like to see it happen? Like, is this a possible, could that fight happen in 2025? Is this something you're not seeing happening until 2026, 2027? Or when could that fight possibly happen if it does?
Well, look, we got the same promoters now, and we work with the same team. But I've
Yeah.
been promised within the year or next year the fight has to happen.
Okay. Well, that'd be huge to see then. And so in that fight, then you walk us through, would it likely be at 154, 160 then between you two?
Well, Tim's saying he's coming up. He said he can't make 154 anymore. He wants to come up to 160. So
Okay.
he's made that quite clear. I'm more than happy to
Awesome.
campaign at 160.
I also was reading some other stuff about a potential middleweight tournament going down now, and I asked a couple of different guys about it. You're one of the names that have been listed in the possibility of names in that group. I know right now you have Nikita Tszyu, you have yourself in that group, you have Brock Jarvis rumored to be in this middleweight tournament. Is this something that you are going to be a part of? What exactly is it? Can you kind of give us the details on that?
To be honest, I haven't really heard much about it. You probably have seen or only saw
Okay.
one like Instagram post that I got tagged in and whatnot. But yeah, I heard it's an 8-man tournament
Yeah.
and middleweight division. And obviously, I'm the king of the middleweight division in Australia. I think I'm the highly most ranked middleweight at the moment, top 10.
Yeah.
So I'm controlling that division at the moment. So everyone wants to get their gloves on me, but it's the first I've heard about it. I believe I beat everyone in that tournament, but I haven't really heard too much.
So if you just that is pretty much the details that I'm well aware of as well. So if that was on the table, is that something you'd want to take part in, or is there something where you just want more isolated fights and that's more what you're going for right now?
Well, look, if the tournament elevated me, if they could put belts on the line or financially was rewarding or
Sure.
there was a purpose, then 100%. But
Okay.
I'm 38 fights in. To just be having fights for the sake of fighting is just stupid, to be honest.
Yeah, 100% agree on that. Well, there's another quote you said leading up to your previous fight that I want to ask you about. And you said, I just focus more on being a boxer and not the bad guy or the villain. We know that you've always had a great career of kind of embracing that villain role, the guy that's hated by a lot of people. And you've really done a good job at embracing that and kind of becoming that bad guy in a sense. But you said there that you obviously are looking to step away from that a little bit and become a boxer. Is that still the mentality you have in place?
Look, it's always been my personality. I'm just an easygoing guy. I just focus on my
Yeah.
boxing. I don't really get too involved in what's going on outside of that. But I've got the gift of the gab where I'm very quick-witted. I can talk, and the promoters and the TV pay-per-view love that. So
Yeah.
they were always on my back to try to push that villain role, and I was rolling with it. I was getting good media, good TV exposure, and whatnot. But You can see when I'm not involved in it in my last fight, I just let Keith and Brock Jarvis go at it, and I just kind of sat back looking at these guys at the press conference. There was no pressure on me, and when I said I'm just focusing on my boxing, because it's a lot of work, trying to get involved in all these arguments and, leaving the press conferences and weigh-ins and then all the media that comes out and whatnot. And it was a heavy gig to take, and I'm still willing to do it, but it just needs to be rewarding or beneficial.
Okay. And I know you kind of talked from the beginning of this interview that you've kind of really focused in now. Obviously, before you're up and down with yourself and whatever it was when you're in your younger ages. Now you've really kind of dialed in on yourself and become more consistent version of the best version of yourself. Would you say that in that transition you've now made mentally and physically, that part of that's been okay saying, I want to be the best boxer possible. If that means I'm not going to be the villain role as much, then that's fine.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Like when I don't have
Okay.
to worry about anything, I can just fully go in there and give 100% to my boxing. And when I do that, it shows. Like I can place there, I'm relaxed. I'm picking the shots. I'm throwing 10, landing 9 or 10 shots. Like
Yeah.
my head's not all over the place. When you get caught up in the arguments and the face-offs and whatnot, and I'm cool to do that. But
Sure.
it's you're adding extra pressure. Sometimes on yourself, and at this level, it's those 1 or 2% that make the difference.
hmm That is a role that's difficult for a lot of people, as you alluded to there. I know some guys like yourself have been able to balance the still and still have great careers even in the midst of it. But if you were to say, okay, you got a young fighter coming up, 20, 21, 22 years old, is that a role that people should embrace? Is that something that would be beneficial for themselves? Obviously, there might be financial gains, and that would be obviously a huge thing. But in terms of becoming the best boxer, do you feel like moving yourself to be really more focused on boxing at a younger age would be more beneficial for young fighters?
100%. Not getting
Okay.
caught up in all the chaos and what people said, he said, she said, all that stuff.
hmm
You just focus on yourself, focus on the training, focus on what needs to be done, job ahead. But look, I enjoy the villain role. Don't get me wrong. I go out there and
Yeah.
I don't mind that. But there's time and place. When
Agree.
you got an opponent that's nothing but respectful, I'm going to show the exact same thing. When I got a guy that wants to be loud and abusive, then let's roll with it. It gives me more reason to punch his head in. But you know, it's sometimes they put that role on me when there's no need, and that's when sometimes it can get a bit much.
Now, how do you balance that? Because that is, like you said, boxing in and of itself is a very, very difficult thing. Stepping in that ring, fighting at a high level is difficult. How have you, throughout your career, been able to balance those two different roles and still kind of getting out there and saying, okay, yes, now it's time to kind of move the villain role away. I'm in the ring. I'm going to focus in. How do you kind of shift those mindsets?
That's a good question. Like I just switch off, and I
Okay,
think you got to be born and to be able to do that. Like
fair enough.
I just hear noise. I just even when I'm walking out to the ring, sometimes I've had 15, 20,000 people against me, and it's just booze. I just switch it off, and I just know how to hear noise. Just get in the
Mhm.
ring, and like I said, it's a job. I've got something to do. It's 36 minutes. I've got to be switched on. Anything before or after, it doesn't matter. That 36 minutes is what I've programmed my mind to stay switched on. And that's what I mean. Now, as I'm getting older, at 33, I know to always bring that switched on Michael Zerafa. So there's a dangerous man coming, for what's rightfully his.
All right, so I also want to dive into your overall career in terms of you had 5 losses in your resume, and that's something in the boxing world. So many people want to go down and say, okay, if you get a loss and you don't lose to have a zero anymore, it's a big, big deal. For me, I've always been okay. Yeah, if you lose and you learn from it, it's gonna be fine. If you obviously lose and you don't learn from it, that's gonna be a problem. And you've bounced back time and time again throughout those losses, and obviously a lot of them are always against good fighters as well. But just that's a mentality, it's a stigma, I should say, is probably the better word amongst so many fighters that getting those losses is horrible for your career and so on and so forth. It hasn't seemed to impact you so much. Why is that?
Look, I just truly believe if you haven't lost, you haven't fought anybody.
I agree.
You got to test yourself. To be the best, you got to fight the best. And, I've done that time and time
Mhm,
again, like I've been the underdog in so many of my fights and come out on top,
mhm.
and the 5 losses I've had against all world champions, and 3 of those fights I contested because I thought I'd been robbed.
Yep,
The only ones that, beat me fair and square were Cal Brook on points and Lara.
yeah,
The other three were very questionable.
fair enough. One of those fights I want to get into a little bit more is Laura. Obviously, a great, incredible champion. He's had a great resume and career. But what I really want to ask you about is there was a lot of stuff in terms of building that up that made your career a little bit difficult. Because I know you were originally going to go fight him. You did the step aside for a little bit to have Danny Garcia come in. And throughout 2023, then, can you hear me?
You there?
Yeah, yeah. Can you hear me?
You there?
Yeah, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear. Sorry.
All right, perfect. All good, no worries. And so the reason I want to dive into that is then obviously as you guys were doing the step aside, Danny Garcia and Laura were supposed to fight each other. It ended up putting you in a tough position. In 2023, you ended up not fighting at all. Can you break us down just what exactly all went down that process and what led to that year off for yourself?
Yeah, look, it was my management at the time. We were mandatory in two sanctioning bodies. The IBF, we were ranked number 2 in the world, and we were meant to fight Falcoa, who I wanted to fight because I believe I beat. And then we were also ranked as a mandatory for Lara in the WBA, and we had the option to choose. But my management at the time was a bit selfish, and was looking more at his pocket than the opportunity. And
Hmm.
we ended up taking the Lara fight, and it just kept getting pushed back. And because they were trying to obviously fight Danny Garcia at the
Yeah.
time, because that was a big fight, Lara and Danny Garcia, which then happened after my fight. But
Mm-hmm.
it just kept getting delayed, and I was in a 16-month, training camp, and I just
Yeah.
felt like I got mentally, cooked. I overtrained. I was training 2, 3 times a day, never knowing the date. I just burnt
Wow.
out, and then that's the honest truth. Lara's a phenomenal fighter, and I still believe he beats the prospects up and coming. He's phenomenal at what he does. I'm a huge fan of him, and he was just a better man on the night. But I feel like if I had the right camp and less time and everything, I feel like a different Michael Zerafa would have rocked up, and I believe we'd be world champion today.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was you were PBC at the time there, and that kind of what created this whole issue there. What all, like, just when you're dealing with that and you're trying to go through a year, like you said, you're essentially in a 12, 18-month training camp. That's not fun for anybody. How did you just kind of get through that time process, and what was that like from a mental standpoint, knowing, hey, I want to fight, I have big fights I want to make, and I can't get in the ring, I can't get those fights coming into fruition. How do you deal with that from a mental standpoint?
Yeah, it was mentally hard. Like I said, going to the gym every day, not having a date, not knowing when, where, was just tiring. And that's what I mean. Like I got to the point where I started getting stale because I was just doing it was just repetitive work. I'd run in the morning, I'd do my sparring, my rounds, my pad work, and it's
Hmm.
just repetitive over and over again. And I was doing that, 6, 7 days a week. And again, not knowing the date was just like, tiring. But
Yeah.
we ended up getting the date locked in, and I felt like I was already burnt out by the time the fight came, and mentally I was just off.
Now, as you go through that fight, then you end up having another fight before the one we just discussed a little bit again against Tommy Brown, and that was a great performance overall for yourself as well. When did you feel like you started getting back to yourself? Because we already talked about how you feel like this can be the best version of yourself. You're feeling great. When between the Laura fight, was it the Brown fight, after the Brown fight, the Rast fight? When did you start feeling like you flipped the switch again? You said, you know what? I see myself having a bright future now. I feel great again.
Well, look, as much as I didn't want the loss, I felt like I needed the Lara loss because that's what
Okay.
sparked the fire. And
Really?
no one wants to lose, and I never want to lose, but I felt like that's what I needed.
Mm.
Because I was just very complacent. I was doing the
Wow.
work. I was never missing sessions. I was never lazy. That's never been me. But just that fire, that burning. Where now it's back. Like
Mm.
I'm driving the gym. I'm hungry for sparring. I'm
Mm.
hungry for the next fight. Straight after my next fight, my last fight, sorry, I was in the gym 5 hours later. I was already running,
Really?
ready to go. People were like, "You're crazy, man." Feel like you fought last night. I was like, "Yeah, that was yesterday." Bring on the next guy. We want the next guy. And
Mm.
I'm calling out big names. I'm hungry and excited to fight these guys. Where back then I was just very like, it is what it is. Whenever it happens, it happens. I don't know when it's going to happen. And yeah, I think straight after the Lara fight, I got back home. I was like, you know what, this is it, man. Like, let's go. Wake up. It's time to go
Okay.
now.
Well, you've got yourself in great position now. 2 wins in a row now following that loss. And like you said, you set yourself in position. And we already discussed some things that you want in store for yourself. But I have to imagine the world championship is somewhere in the mix there for yourself with what you want. And I know there's a lot of openings right now. 160 is kind of a confusing division. There's rumors of Adames and Janibek unifying. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. But is a world championship something you have your eyes set on? Is that possible for this year? Or how many more fights away do you think you are from that point?
Well, look, I spoke to my promoters, No Limit, and they've, been in contact with the guys overseas and PBC, and that is the plan for me to
Okay.
headline back home. I've never fought for a world title at home. I've always had to
Mm-hmm.
go to their backyard and fight the champion. So,
Yep.
the plan is to get that, live here, main event, pay per view with the champion, whether it's a vacant title or the world champion. I'm not shying away from anybody. We want that fight. I believe I beat these guys. But yeah, that's definitely on the cards for this year, early next year.
All right, so outline the next 12 to 18 months for yourself. If you could have everything go according to plan, how many fights do you want? What do you want to accomplish? What's the dream scenario for the next 12 to 18 months look like for yourself?
Well, I've got 3 fights this year. I've already had one. If I
Yep.
can get a fourth one in, that'll be great.
Okay.
I want to be busy. I want to be always fighting. I mean, when you're fighting, you're moving up the rankings, you're making money,
Yeah.
and you're closer to a world title. So for me, that's the goal. That's the dream. So that's what I want to do. I want to fight, keep moving up the ranks. I'm 10 in the world. Like I said, it doesn't have to be big jumps, but I just want to be moving forward all the time. Every move, every fight I have, I want to be moving forward. They want to be making sense. Every time I fight.
Absolutely. Well, I also want to pick your brain in just the 160 division overall because you've experienced a lot of these top guys. You know the division quite well. And if you were to say, I think it is time for that 160 gets a unified champion between Janabek, Laura, Janabek, Adames, whatever it is. But if you could pick the best fight, best stylistic matchup and fight you can make between the three champions right now, what would that matchup look like?
Look, I think Janabek and Lara are the two top killers at the moment. Lara's
Okay.
just so precise. He's a little sniper. He's so. I think he's a better fighter than he was back when he was fresher. Because he
Hmm.
moved a lot back then, and when he fought Canelo, he danced around. He had his legs. Well, now he wants to sit there and throw with you, and he's got that timing, that experience. Janabek's another beast. He fought one of our guys down here, an Aussie Kiwi, but I think they're probably two of the top guys in the division. I mean, there's guys that are going in and out. Eubank's up and down. I think he's going up or he's going down. I don't know. There's a
Yeah.
few others. So there's guys that are always going up and down, but I'm right in the mix. I'm only, like I said,
Yep.
I'm sitting at 10. And I've done rounds with guys like this, and I've been around with them. So I'm excited. Like I said, I'm waiting for my call up.
Out of the three champions right now, who would be the one you want?
Um, Probably Janovic.
Is there a reason behind that? Is it
He's
stylistic or?
no, look, he's a southpaw, so he's already tricky off the bat. But he's a walk forward southpaw,
Yep.
and I think he's a great fighter. I think he's done great things, and he's a beast. But when I seen him live as well, he walks forward and he does get lazy at times.
That's
And
true.
I think someone at my caliber and my experience, I feel like I can capitalize on that. The right Zerafa rocks up, and I got punching power too. So
Yep.
he's probably the one I'd test myself with because obviously Lara beat me, and
Yep.
yeah, I think Janovic would probably be the next one I'd go for.
Absolutely, man. Well, you kind of already said that you want at least 3 fights this year, maybe even 4. So when's the next time we could see you in the ring? Do you want to return May, June, July? Like, when's the next time we could possibly see you back in the ring?
Yeah, look, they're saying late June, early July.
Okay.
So I'm already in the gym. Like I said, I'm spar this morning. I'm running. I'm doing all my work.
Perfect.
So for me, the sooner the better. I want the Zerafa needs to be back. We've got to give the five fans what they want.
Absolutely, man. Well, I got one final question I was like wrapping up every interview with, and let's talk about your legacy. And as you said, yes, you still got a long time to go, but when that career does come to a conclusion, you decide to step away from boxing. What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want people to remember you for?
Just that guy that fought everybody, man. I fought every world champion in their backyard. Even now, you talk about all the guys I fought. Other guys are picking up world titles, fighting for vacant world titles in their backyard and whatnot. I've always had to get on a plane and fight as the main event pay-per-view, against Peter Quillen, against Cal Brook, against Lara. I've always had to go to their backyard and fight them, and I've never shied away from a fight, despite the Tim Zoo drama and whatnot. I've never shied away from a fight. And I just want to be known as, when they hear my name, they'll say, man, that guy fought everybody. Zerafa. Never shied away from a fight.
Absolutely. Michael, I appreciate you so much for coming on today, man. It was a blessing to have you on here, get to know you, talk to you, man, and can't wait to see when you return to that ring.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it, man. Much respect. You're doing great things for the sport.
Thank you. Appreciate that, man. You're always welcome on as well, man.
God bless you, brother. Thank you.
God bless, man. See you, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate everyone for tuning into this interview. I'll have that edited out and posted here in just a couple hours. But before I get into that portion, I do have some other segments I want to get into today. Now, I'm going to go on a quick, about 30-second commercial break, maybe a minute commercial break, and I'll get right back to you guys to wrap this show with a preview of what's going to go down this weekend in fights. See you guys shortly. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the SchuZ Show. Well, to wrap up today's show, I'm going to get into some personal segments today. Now, we got a pretty solid fight weekend this weekend, and I'll say solid, but obviously it's nothing too crazy this weekend. However, there are still some fights I want to make sure I discuss, break down for you guys as we head into the weekend, because both Saturday and Sunday feature some good old fights that we're going to have this weekend. Now, the next 2 weeks following this next weekend, we got some stacked fights. We all know the Chris Eubank, Conor Benn going down a week from Saturday. And then on the other side of that, we have one of the craziest 3-day runs that we'll see in boxing history when we're going to have the likes of Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, Teofimo Lopez. We have Canelo Alvarez, Naoya Inoue. All of those guys will be fighting in a 3-day span. So that's going to be a lot of breaking down happening 2 weeks from now. But that does not mean that this weekend does not have its fair share of solid fights as well. And so instead of just breaking down each fight, because listen, a lot of the fights are not going to be the best of fights. A lot of guys are doing tune-up fights. There's a couple of decent-sized fights, but I want to do a little bit different this time. I want to talk about what I'm expecting and looking for this weekend to see what's going to catch my eye. Because there's some guys that can make some statements this weekend that I'm really intrigued to see how they're going to perform. So let's go down this list now at fight previews. First one we got coming up, and just to guess what now? 18, 16, 15, 16 hours, whatever it is, out there across the pond in the UK. Dalton Smith, Mathieu Germain, those two guys were going down at it. What do I look for in this fight? Well, the winner of this fight will likely position themselves to be having potentially a title eliminator. Now, I'm not positive on that, but the winner will get themselves put in a very, very good position. Both guys have great resume. Both guys have been trending upwards, and this is going to be a good fight for both guys. Two other fights in that card that I'm really looking to keep an eye on. Josh Padley. Josh Padley is a guy that when he was thrown into the Shakur Stevenson fight, I was actually a little bit more intrigued about that matchup than most people were. Because I watched him perform on the Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois fight card when he went upset Mark Chamberlain. And I became very intrigued in the way he fights. I thought it was an excellent performance. Now, the thing that happens is that he goes and fights Shakur Stevenson. He put great heart, great effort. Obviously came up well short to that fight, but he was on short notice. And he also was working 2 jobs at the time. Things have changed now for Josh Padley. He's now signed a promotional company. Josh Padley has also now put himself in a position where he can now work all the time on his own craft in boxing. He's already was a good fighter beforehand. So what am I looking for in this fight? I want to see what Josh Padley looks like now. In his return to the ring with a promotional company and full-time being able to stay in the boxing ring, what does Josh Padley look like this weekend? Because if he has a statement here, it's going to be quite intriguing to see how he works his way up this division again now the right way. Other guy in that card that I'm intrigued to see, Josh Warrington. Similarly, we saw in the Daniel Dubois fight card and Anthony Joshua fight card that he decided to put the gloves down and retire in the ring. Well, he comes out and says he's scared of retiring now and he wants to continue to fight in his career. Very, very well-established career. But Josh Warrington is going to go out there and return to the ring now. What am I looking for? Can the old Josh Warrington, or at least a fraction of that self, return to the ring? Because if so, there's rumors of a potentially pretty decent-sized fight being lined up for him in his second fight back. So what is that going to look like? Well, he obviously has to get the win in this fight. If he loses, his career is automatically going to be forced essentially to retire. But if he gets a win, a dominant win, then he's going to set himself up for a big, decent-sized fight, I should say. He has a great resume, great record, very beloved by fans. I think that Josh Warrington having a good performance this weekend could set himself up to have a solid-sized fight. Let's go to the nighttime card now. Coming out to the United States of America, 2 guys I'm really looking for, 2 people I should say, I'm looking for. The one I really am excited to see is Charles Conwell. For those that do not know Charles Conwell, he is a guy that I think is one of the most underrated fighters in America right now. At 154, he has done incredible work. But yet he does not get the retention he deserves. Now, I understand partially why. 154 is a loaded division. Potentially even you could say the best division in boxing. So what am I looking for in Charles Conwell? Well, if he goes out there and has a dominant display, KOs his opponent, makes a statement, let's say, it would not shock me to have him be in a title eliminating type of fight. Because he is a guy that has immense talent, and I believe he has a chance to become a world champion in the future. I am that high on Charles Conwell. Now, he has to go out there and perform this weekend, but for those of you that do not know Charles Conwell, this is a chance to go watch him. I am very, very high on him. I think he's an excellent fighter. He will be fighting this weekend on the co-main event for what I'm going to talk about next in Gabriela Fundora. So let's head right up to her performance now. An undisputed flyweight championship fight, Gabriela Fundora, Marilyn Badillo. In my opinion, I don't think it's going to be quite competitive. Fundora is an incredible fighter. Listen, she's already done immense, incredible things under just a short time span. One of the youngest undisputed, I think the youngest undisputed champion, my apologies, in women's history. She is dominant. She knows what she's doing in the ring. And I don't think somebody's going to stop her in this fight. I think she's going to remain undisputed champion of the world heading out throughout this night and on Saturday heading to Sunday. Well, folks, then we head over to Easter. Easter Sunday, we have a fight in which I already previewed on yesterday's show. Ben Whittaker, Liam Cameron. This is one of the biggest fights of Ben Whittaker's career. This is the biggest fight of Ben Whittaker's career to this point, and it will be one of the most important fights that he will ever fight. And I say this because if he loses this fight, it's not going to look good for Ben Whittaker's career moving forward. Ben Whittaker must win this weekend's fight, otherwise his hype will officially plummet. This is as must win of a fight for a fighter as it gets. He should not be in this position as a young rising prospect, but because of what's happened outside of boxing, because of his promotional company, so on and so forth, it's now put this pressure on him. Will he perform? That's to be determined. My opinion at this point in time, I think he will come out on fire. Ben Shalom screwed up big time on the promotional aspect in regards to getting the contract done correctly. He made a clarified statement on the ring interview just this morning saying that, okay, this is not on Ben. Ben had no part of the discussions. This is between Ben Shalom and them screwing up. If that is to be true, Ben Whittaker seems to be locked in. He looks in excellent shape. Now, so does Liam Cameron. But Ben Whittaker looks in excellent shape heading into this fight. And I believe that we're going to see the best version of Ben Whittaker. I'm not sure we're going to go see all the exciting moves and swagger and cockiness or whatever we might say in the ring, but I think we're going to see the best version of Ben Whittaker on Sunday, on Easter Sunday. That will be the main event. A couple of the guys I've been enticed to see on that weekend. Tyler Denny. His last fight was against Hamza Shiraz. Hamza Shiraz put him down early. Was not a competitive fight. But I still think he's a solid fighter. I'm excited to see what he looks like. Can he get back on the win column? And what type of fighter can he become in his weight class now? Frazier Clark is making his return. The last time we saw him in the ring was very unpleasant. He had a dent in his head. Now, that was a point when we were all saying this could be the end of his career. Well, here he is fighting again this weekend on Easter Sunday. Same exact weekend he fought last year when he lost the very first fight, or they got a draw in the very first fight with Fabio Wardley. The rematch didn't go so well, as we all have seen now. So, what does Frazier Clark look like in his return? That's what I'm excited to see. Because if for Frazier Clark, the winner of the Clark versus Fabio Wardley fight was likely going to make the next step to being an international world fighter. That is what Fabio Wardley has now become, getting the Jarrell Miller fight. Frazier Clark could still reach a world stage eventually, but for the time being, he's going to have to continue to stay domestically and fight in the UK and build himself up in that way. So what does that look like for himself? Well, can he return? Is he able to be 100%? And how does he look like in that return? If it is a good return for Frazier Clark on Sunday, he's going to start working his way up again, and he could make that world jump by maybe next year, depending on how many times he wants to fight. Likely he'll fight again this year, and so we'll see how he works his way up. Then Lee Cutler and Sam Eggington in a super welterweight fight. This is a fight that I think two underrated fighters, two guys that have great talent, will be going at it. I don't have a prediction in terms of who's going to win, but I believe that the winner of this fight will make a statement and continue to work their way up the domestic ranks. And maybe even by the end of this year, the winner of that fight would position themselves to be on the world rankings potentially. I like both fighters, though. Both Lee Cutler and Sam Eggington are both solid fighters. That is my preview for this weekend's fights. Now, my final thing I want to discuss and get into before I wrap up today's show is discussing a fight that was announced. And this is why I'm excited for what I discussed yesterday. We saw the Jake Paul news coming out. He's fighting Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., so on and so forth. But what did I say yesterday? I said, hey, that is what it is. The Jake Paul fight is always going to be a big show, and it's going to be debatable and so on and so forth. What does the undercard look like? Well, we got clarity now what the co-main event's going to be like. Gilberto Ramirez, as most people call him, Zerto, he'll be defending his WBA and WBO cruiserweight world titles against Juniel Dortillos. This is going to be an interesting fight. Now, Zerto will demolish him, but if all goes as planned, we should hopefully get Jairo Pitaya-Zerto unification fight by the end of this year. And this is a fight that most people are not going to be familiar with Zerto outside of boxing. The casual fans don't know him. This puts a massive spotlight on Zerto, which is awesome to see. So we'll see what's been unfolding that fight. It's going to go down June 28th in Anaheim, California. So we'll see how that fight unfolds. But with that being said, folks, I just want to say I appreciate you guys all for tuning in this week. 5 episodes down once again, back-to-back weeks, getting all 5 weeks or all 5 shows in this week done. And I just want to say thank you for everyone for tuning in once again. I hope you guys have an incredible Easter Sunday. I hope you guys all have a great, safe weekend as well. Enjoy the fights this week, and I'll see you guys back on Monday. May God bless you guys all. Have a great Easter weekend. SchuZ is out. See you guys on Monday.